All right, I'm going to continue talking a little bit about conversion, obversion, and contraposition. Now, like I said, I'm not as big a fan of this as other things, and if I would suggest as well, if you get into problems like this, I think there's some value in kind of following this operation. There's some value in kind of it helps you associate universal statements, but by and large, I don't feel like, I'm just going to be completely honest, I don't feel like this is something that you're necessarily going to use all the time. There's maybe a few rules you can yield from this, but by and large, this is not like the most useful tool, I would say, from my own personal experience, my own personal feelings. Now, some people will disagree, and I accept that. So, but I would say if you turn your book to page 82, you get this chart that's also, like I said, it's on, if you go to your operations thing, and then you go to page 5 of that, you'll get this same chart, okay? But it's online as well as in your book, and I would also recommend earmarking that again. But what happens here is, what you can find is that if you perform conversion on a universal statement, if you perform conversion on a universal positive statement, such as all S or P, then you can find that if you perform conversion, you're going to get all P or S. Well, by saying that, then that automatically says that there is nothing that is a P that is not an S. And this doesn't say that. And so this statement does not follow deductively from the other one. But if you look at the obversion, where you change it from a positive to a negative, and you negate the predicate, you'll see that the Venn diagram here looks the exact same as the Venn diagram over here for all SRP. Sorry, let me just push that so we can see it all the way. And so what happens is, since these look the exact same, we know that whenever you perform a version on an A statement, that you will get a valid statement. And you get the same thing with contraposition. This looks the exact same as that. But what happens is it's not the case that obversion and contraposition always yield valid statements. It only works with the A statement. If you go with an E statement, which is no SRP, you'll find that in conversion it yields something that looks the exact same, and in obversion it yields something that looks the exact same. So these two follow validly. These are both valid deductions from the first E statement. But in this case, contraposition gives you something in which something can be both S and P, and it doesn't say that. This says no S or P. And so this is clearly not a valid deduction from that. So what you'll find that A statements can be obversions and contrapositions and still be valid. And E statements can be conversions and obversions, but they can't be contrapositions. And so there is some value in this. I statements, you can do conversion and obversion, but you can't do contraposition. And in O statements, you can do obversion and contraposition, which means basically that A and O, which are logically contradictory as the square of opposition, both the modern and traditional methods show you, will tell you you can perform obversion and contraposition and yield something that is valid. On the other hand, your E and I statements, which are, once again, contradictory according to the square of opposition, you can do conversion and obversion and get a deductively valid argument. Which means that if you have a premise and then somebody performs conversion or obversion, or you see a statement that has been converted or obverted, then you know if it came from an E or I statement, it is valid. And you know that if it performs contraposition on those, that is not valid. There's a little chart, if you move down, that gives you all this information nicely in here. And it also does it as well in this one, what shows the equivalence. And it gives you sort of, that there's the flip-flop, QCQ, that gives you a bunch of these that, mnemonics. I don't know that I would memorize those unless you really want to. But at least in some ways, this does give us something that is of use that we can use to do it. And we can determine if an argument is deductively valid or invalid based upon simply what we started with as a premise and what we got from that via obversion or contraposition. All right, that will suffice as my review. Really, by and large, this first part of the Venn diagram, this first part of categorical logic, is fairly simple. It's two circles. You got a few rules. You can kind of see what follows. The square of opposition. You kind of just need to kind of see how those arrows work, get comfortable with that. And once you're comfortable with that, that helps a lot. On the other hand, the second part of it, the obversion, conversion, things like that, I would highly recommend you kind of keep an eye on the book. Even when you're taking the exam, you can look back at that, and that's fine. I mean, to me, that's more about learning how those operations work. If you do the exercises in the book, that should give you the familiarity and comfort to be able to do those, and that's what I would do. I would say that, by and large, most students don't find this first part of Venn diagrams too difficult, because to a large degree it is fairly simple. I mean, it's just two circles. You can see what exists in it, what exists not. It's when we get into that third circle that students begin to become a little bit more confused. This part is sort of just learning about how the squares of opposition, the existential assumption, things like that. And it doesn't go into that. It doesn't get that difficult. It can be a little difficult to kind of follow all those arrows and get comfortable with the squares of opposition. But by and large, by doing the homework, you'll get familiar, and I would highly recommend you kind of look back at those with some regularity. I think the main thing we want you to take from this is the idea that something like all S or P means the same thing as no S or non-P, or all non-P or non-S. If you negate the predicate and subject and flip them via contraposition, that you'll get something that's still true in an A statement. But in an E or I statement, you won't. And I think that's kind of the idea, is that you can kind of see is how these statements relate by moving about the parts, that they also yield other things. All right. I think that's everything. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. By and large, this is one of those units where doing the homework really begins to help you out. That if you spend the time and you do your homework and you go through these problems and really feel like you understand them, you'll do well. And then that's about it. Have a good day.